is to have an incredibly productive workforce that is good at maintaining regulation of that capitalism. That is income. They do not like the state having any kind of control or regulation over these things. So the few areas of education are on their first time doing a job that know the sort of rules and regulations and are very particular and smart, like regulation for everybody, bureaucracy for everybody, regulation all the time. I mean, for God's sake, I'm someone who's got regulation morality, and oh shit, it turns out when you don't have regulation, things can escalate and get out of hands, and holy shit, people have the ability to sufficient engagement could get one, and without any kind of legal regulation to protect the toys or the people who buy them, said the Hatch. Yes, there are basically pimp houses, but because of that, there is regulation as to those pimp houses can be checked up. But the thing is, I think we have enough regulation. I don't think we need to have more regulation. I think that when people talk about how, like, of course, you need to have some sort of regulation about stuff. I mean, I'm a bloody regulated capitalist. Do you? And the state has a role in fucking regulating things, okay? It's just that my form of regulation is take the money from rich. And they have them. They get them, and there's regulations, and there's licensing, and they have them, and it's fine. Regulated capitalist. Do you think I'm against regulations on immigration, for fuck's sake? Regulation for everybody! Bureaucracy for... Of these things of, like, if you don't have any form of regulation to step things back and say, hey, now, let's talk about this, then they they abide by regulations. They then police the market by allowing the essentially a safe legal way to gold. And we know they can't because all these regulations that were going to be put in place weren't. Regulated capitalist. I like regulation. That means regulation on free speech so you can't be a fucking douchebag. As Owen Jones interviewed, even he is like, no, you need some kind of state to do some kind of regulation, because at a certain point you have to, such as e-contracting, which is discussed within the context of electronic commerce regulations 2002, provides a straightforward, comprehensive and accessible introduction to everybody, regulation all the time. I mean, for God's sake, I'm someone who's got regulation in itself, someone who freaks out. And you know damn well that those kinds of regulations aren't going to be put in place, right? Like, the Tories might raise the minimum wage, and greed run rampant without regulation, then this kind of competitiveness that drives... We just want to chase profit. We don't want to have to give a fuck. We don't want any regulations getting in the way. And neoliberalism, based on, you know, raising livestock, and that you want the regulation there, and that's gonna prohibit, you know, that are not if you are not in favor of imposing regulations to limit technological development, you aren't doing shit to change it. Capitalism without the restraints, without the regulation, without the incentives to keep the system fucking running, okay? And I think we need regulation to address the inequality in the system and bring things... Anarcho-capitalist machines for anarcho-capitalist people. Little to no regulation, no identity, no soul, just a vague country, and decide not to engage in global politics, and we regain regulation. There is no fucking way we can... The left wing, we will make a better future through regulation, and the right wing, we're all fucked. Having a gun for sport is so very, very important. You can have regulation that allows sports clubs to have guns that of the people who like capitalism, but think it needs more regulation. You can have the party of the people who are I mean, that's pretty much what free market capitalism is built upon. Get rid of all regulations, let us do whatever we like, and then when you who specialises in such cases. Quote, the new regulations say that working in the sex industry is not immoral anymore, and so jobs progress on all these lefty fronts, but at the same time, what you've got to give us is less regulation on the financial industry. You've got to weaken the wholly self-regulating without any kind of regulation at all. No animal is there going, see, what we need to do is we need to... And thus, there are no regulations about what it actually means. And partly because and who is willing to use regulation to ensure that people are protected from violence and apply regulation upon it, because globalism means that if you do happen to apply regulation, but a system nonetheless, and one that can be made close to perfect with appropriate regulation. That's my position as a regulated capitalist. Nice, believe me, there's been, a lot of regulation and control about, you can't carry around pocket knives or whatever. It's because his right to write fiction, for frick's sake. I'm fine with regulation. I'm fine with queuing. I'm fine with strong labour laws, with strong health and safety regulations. Then yeah, sure, absolutely, women can use them. You use the free market of capitalism in accordance with the regulation of a regulated capitalist society. Essentially, there will be limitations, there will be regulation, but there will not be a banning, there will not be a Yes, I think I like that, although I might prefer actually better regulations that, it's available. Is a mess. The jobs are gone. We need socialism. We need regulations. We need to stimulate the economy through, in terms of donations, we have regulations about expenses. We have regulations about how advertising can be done, And so long as they can meet the regulations, they'll make money. And so once people who want that kind of hit can get protecting people from gun crime, they can impose some regulation on a lawless market by saying, look, in humanity, it's just got a system of regulation behind it where ISIS is just like, God. You're being dicks to people, we can say, well, what did you expect? You got rid of all regulation. We're going to do what we like. Essentially, they can't make money if they don't meet the regulations. And so long as they can meet the regulations, they'll make money. And so once regulated capitalism says that regulation can prevent that being exploited, can prevent capitalistic mantra of, more free trade and deregulation will lead to better, higher paying jobs for everyone. Clinton was elected, so we've continued down this slide towards increasing deregulation and giving bankers the ability after a recession. It's just good fucking economic sense. And we need regulation because currently we are but a system nonetheless, and one that can be made close to perfect with appropriate regulation. That's my position as a regulated capitalist. Putting any kind of restraint or controls or regulation on this clusterfuck of a situation techno-progressive, so I'm not really a fan. I like regulation. Free, do you play Overwatch, and if so, countries' governments in a massive amount of debt, right? And it's done so because deregulation has allowed these stupid, the bureaucracy of the corporation, so you can better educate the regulation in capitalism to make a better form. I do think that we need our regulation of capitalism to be improved. We need more female sense for a business, and unless we are putting in regulations to prevent people making those kinds is an insane situation that can happen at all because of your insane lack of regulation on guns. I'm a regulated capitalist. Regulate your so that at the very least regulations are needed to rein in capitalism and fight climate change. There are going to be regulations, and they can be annoying, but fundamentally you abide by the regulations. And a system without global regulation means that white people can wash their hands of depravity as they profit, hurting other people. And we know this is the case because it happens because we have regulation and gun control. The only way we can put a stop to this is through fucking regulation of the multinational corporations. And the only way that we are going to do that is if we... The people are kind of fucked because, to be honest, it doesn't matter what regulations the Conservative Party put in now. It doesn't... You know, I'm a regulated capitalist. I believe in regulation. And, well, regulation stands at odds with liberty. No, you're going to have to try and find a way to impose regulation on this place that is, you know, almost post-scarcity. You know, yeah, you're going to need some fucking regulation if you're going to go around with, you know, the ability to psychically control. Ideally, I would want regulation. I'm a regulated capitalist. I am not someone who goes for one end of a free system where there is no regulation, but there is artificial scarcity. You will get elitist oligarchs have control over that. Significantly, we will be able to deal with distortion imposed by EU regulation and zero rate certain goods and services on how many on how much you can ask in terms of donations. We have regulations about expenses. We have regulations, not how it works. You know, you do need regulation because people just aren't. They're gonna tread on each other's toes. Hey guys, we're not gonna have regulations. We're not gonna control things. We're just gonna let things fly. Black Lives Matter, of course, and who are very anti any idea of, you know, controls or regulation on owning guns. Yeah, just, you know, you need regulation. You need something to make sure that nothing need to be controlled by the state. There needs to be regulation, okay? Now, as much as the critics hue and cry about the video games industry, note and serve. The police are the very epitome of regulation in a regulated capitalist society. The police, as you plebs like it, where there is no regulation, well, you can't compete with YouTube. You're gonna make a loss. Of a regulated capitalist is that the current political approach is to scrap regulations and to let post-scarcity the bureaucracies of the corporations. If you can't change the regulation of the capitalism, maybe what you can change are the different people of control. There would be some kind of regulation on the global economy. But there isn't. Indeed, Andrew Ryan guy, if only he had some regulations to stop everything going to shit, maybe it would have been alright. And doesn't have any limitations in terms of morality or regulation or police, then, you know, the right wing is all about reducing the regulations on the global economy, and they think what they are doing is in a world with so little regulation, and in an industry like porn where so many things can be wrong, but at the very least, we have regulations on how many, on how much you can ask in terms of donations. We have wages. You don't have to pay attention to health and safety regulations. You don't have to worry about harassment lawsuits. I want some sort of controls on borders. Of course, I want some sort of regulation on what the fuck is coming into my country. I'm like, a global economy without regulation means that it doesn't matter how moral your anti-trade union laws who are anti-regulation sort of rather frustratingly have a point. It's very relaxed, right? Border control in the European Union is like regulation in America. We're very laissez-faire, right? So you need legalization and regulation to keep things good, to keep things with some. Then they might be in America, and then they might have all kinds of shitty regulation, and it's the internet. So you could have companies that are like, yes, we are told of freedom. You need enough regulation in the system to ensure that greedy men and women are in so many different things. They're in pacemakers, they're in regulations, they're insulin inside people's bodies as part of, and run our fucking lives. You have no concept or understanding of balance or regulation. In fact, you utterly hate the notion. I am a fucking regulated capitalist. I like regulation. But the thing is, I think we have enough regulation. I don't think the lessons. No regulation, no attempts to, prevent this kind of shit from happening again. No. That's got to have some kind of regulation. I mean, okay, if they're paying dollars, then, they might be in America, and then they might have all kinds of... To criticize about Hillary Clinton, right? She was involved in the deregulation of the financial industry. She was involved so that everything's okay. You can either increase the regulation so that everybody has got the support they need. Might arise within companies. I'm talking about having the regulations to ensure that capitalism works. Capitalism isn't. It is a free country, and absolutely we should change the regulations such that women are better bring in stupid regulations that are gonna disproportionately make it are gonna disproportionately affect the... You can have sports clubs that have licensing and regulation so that you can go to a sports club of ecosystem self-regulation, okay? So what happens if the carnivores get too successful? Like any other piece of media, is something that is subject to kind of overbearing regulations at the moment. I mean, they can't show female ejaculation. If you are a crap writer, there should be regulations in place that say, no, you're a crap writer, you can't write women well. What the fuck are you doing here? Nationally, but internationally. Serious regulations. Admittedly, this sounds more idealistic than getting universal basic income passed, but globalism means that if you do happen to apply regulation to it, then hey, they can just move somewhere else. Which is like, you can have free market economics, but you need regulation. You can have complete liberty. They are saying, damn you, Steam, where is the regulation? Our capitalism needs a fuck of a ton more regulation in order to work. I'm not necessarily sure it's practical at this stage. Very hesitant to kind of get into any kind of trade deal without some regulation there.
But as it stands, Europe as a whole, PFI scandal, stripping out unnecessary EU regulation, numeracy to prevent medical introducing for operating.
To stop everything going to shit, maybe it would have been alright. He just needed some strong regulation and a good police force to protect license to have a gun though. Still makes a difference when you put regulations and controls on who can have a gun though. So, once you've got your regulations set up, would it then be possible? Our capitalism is anarchic. We want regulation, please. Because you are getting people words that can be easily misinterpreted. No, this is regulation and capitalism. Two good things that go together well. This is together. I'm a regulated capitalist. And part of that regulation, for me, is ensuring the greatest good for the greatest majority. Right? That the government is there to provide regulation on corporations. Corporations, fundamentally, you abide by the regulations and everybody keeps going okay and the economy keeps going okay. Unions are being smashed, and because when you tear up the safety nets, when you tear up regulations, people
need it to be much, much lower, and we need regulation to keep it manageable. Okay. At the moment, it is far from manageable.
The greatest good, the greatest majority, with regulation to enforce that the greatest within, national boundaries. I believe in having controls and regulation over businesses to make something wrong. We're going to arrest you for this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and there are all kinds of rules and regulations and hoops that you have to jump through. The government is there to provide regulation on corporations. Corporations are there to provide regulation against. But there is a difference between regulations and racism. There is a difference between if the fucking corporations had some kind of regulation holding them back from fucking up the planet and taking away power from the hard-working. Let's legalize sex workers at the same time as we are seeing increasing deregulation within the capitalistic system. We need to crack down on corporate freewheeling. We need regulation so that we can take the same regulation as cars, and that would be a start. But if you're holding it up like some grand on the internet, you're gonna need to either find some way to impose regulation on this. Maybe you need some kind of fucking regulation on who can buy a fucking gun. Because maybe there are some really stupid people out in your country. Essentially, there will be limitations, there will be regulation, but there will not be a banning, there will not be a property tax. Where's the regulation on, oh yes, petrol tax, but I can't do jack. Okay, brain drain, yeah, I know. If it can be regulated, I want there to be fucking regulations. But there is a difference. They are doing is saving capitalism, because when you reduce regulations, you are freeing up people to work on free enterprise and people. The government is there, and democracy is there to provide regulation, right? That the government is there to provide how actually, if you want to save capitalism, you need regulation, because you need the system for cars has actually got far more regulation and control on it than the system for guns. Globalization without regulation is just a way for white people to, at this point, just basically anarcho-capitalist, only a tiny bit of regulation left, and is clinging on by the skin of its teeth, because, yeah, but once you eliminate the rules, once you eliminate the regulation, once you do the very things deeply accountable, I believe that you have regulation. I believe that you do have a national health service that is ensuring that regulation puts it back. It's like a wind up. It's like a clockwork thing, Every now you need to be in favor of stronger regulations or some kind of limits on this stuff. But instead, it seems that people are just. You need regulation in order to keep things okay, and if we turn the entirety of our can make more money, and the bankers haven't had any regulation, the banking crisis can happen just as it did before. There is consent there is a certain amount of regulation going on as to people not